Thank you for joining us for a Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indians Native Cinema Showcase panel on Native Shorts filmmaking. Today, we're joined by Ben Alex Dupris and Zoe Hopkins. Before we start, we'd like to gratefully acknowledge Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who continue to make their homelands here today. So, we've been doing Native Cinema Showcase for over 20 years, and a lot of what we screen are Native shorts by Native filmmakers. And we want to give some time to just kind of talk about shorts, because I think features always get a lot of the publicity. So I'm happy to be here with Ben Alex and Zoe. So just want to give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Let's start with Zoe.
Hi there. My name is Zoe Hopkins. I'm a filmmaker, writer, and director. I live in Six Nations, Ontario, which is a community composed of 6 different nations. I'm Mohawk on my dad's side, and this is his territory. So I'm raising my son here, and I've learned to speak the Mohawk language. But I'm born in Bella Bella, and on my mother's side, I'm Heiltsuk, and that's her people's community. And I grew up a city kid, and I now am working on getting my second feature film out into the world and slowly making my foray into writing and directing for television as well.
Hi, I'm Ben Alex Dupris from the Colville Indian Reservation in eastern Washington State, Entiant and Sinaiaks bands from my mother's. That's where I was raised. Also, Mnicoujou Lakota. My father is from Eagle Butte, South Dakota. And I'm a filmmaker and artist, and really excited to be here and talk about short films.
I thought that maybe a good place to start would just kind of be for each of you to kind of tell us how you got here, in your career. Ben Alex, we've screened 2 of your films this year, Sister Wolves and Bunky Echo-Hawk, The Resistance, and last year we screened Sweetheart Dancers. Zoe, this year we're screening your feature, Run Woman Run, but in the past we've screened your shorts from the Embargo Collective, Mohawk Midnight Runners, things like that. So I think, we'd like to hear just kind of about your careers and how you've gotten to the point where you are now. Maybe Ben Alex, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I have a very, very unconventional path to, being a filmmaker. I've always kind of been a peripheral. I've been around the entertainment industry, working on sets and going back and forth to my res and just working for the tribe. And, it's been a lot of years kind of wasting time. I was, I was an alcoholic for a really long time, so that kind of kept me from being serious about my work. But I've always, written. I was on a Spokane Slam team for a minute, and I've always been really into, shooting. So I would go on tour with bands and film them just casually. So I've always loved filmmaking and just storytelling in general. And it wasn't until Standing Rock, when I went out there for 5 months, where we had a film of media teams that were all working together to try to document the occupation. And it really just, got me, reignited my love for it. Because I thought, this will be the last time I'm on the front lines. Like, I really appreciate the youth and the movements that we have in Indian country. But as I get older, I have to take care of my family and my children and my responsibilities as a dad. So I decided to use filmmaking as my weapon of choice, to continue to spread awareness for all the changes that we're experiencing in Indian country. And it's just kind of become a symbiotic relationship with the industry, which is expanding because of new technology and network and streaming opportunities, fellowships, great places like Native Cinema Showcase, which I've supported and just, attended for years. It's a real honor to be included in these lineups the last few years, because I have just been a fan of filmmaking, and just, it's great to just be on this side of the fence and being asked questions about what I feel. And I take it with great responsibility that, to have a platform to speak to people about what we go through as Indigenous artists and filmmakers.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. Thank you. How about you, Zoe?
I began as an actor, kind of by accident. I ended up being in a film that I wasn't trying to be in that film, and then I got cast. I was a teenager, and I worked on that film for 2 months. It was a big production. At the time, it was the biggest budget Canadian film ever made, and I was 15 years old, and so I was there for off school for 2 months, paddling a canoe. It was like buckskin and braids kind of thing. It was a film called Black Robe, and I was too young to have formed any idea about like what I thought about that kind of cinema. I wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do yet. I knew it would be something artistic, but I wasn't sure, and but I fell in love with being on that set. I just loved it so much. And one day, Tantu Cardinal, she's one of the people in the film, she just looked at me and she was like, "Oh no, you got the bug. You're never going to get out of this industry." And it's true, I haven't. I ended up working as an actor for a few years, but I got really tired of the roles that were being offered at the time, and I kind of quit. But I fell in love with the whole machine. I loved every aspect of it. Just loved being on set. And so I went to film school because I figured I really like this world. I don't really know what I want to do with it yet, but I think I want to be behind the camera. And I realized, I'm kind of good at writing, and I was too afraid to claim the word director for myself for a while. It took a little while to get brave enough to realize that that's what I love doing, and that I'm good at that. And it took a little bit to overcome the fear about claiming that for myself. But I started making short films. I went to film school. I have a degree in film from Ryerson, and have been making shorts and sort of working my way up to a first feature. And in the middle of getting ready for my first feature, I got hired to direct a different feature, which is Kayak to Klimt 2, this little poster over here. And so I got to make that film, which was really, really great. And so my second film was actually a film that I was trying to make for quite a long time, but it took a while to get there. And I didn't ever imagine that I would be sort of brought on to make another film, because until that point, I had just like been soldiering along, like making my own work. And I have largely gotten to where I am by making my own work, either applying for grants to make a short film, or like being commissioned to make different short films from like networks or whatnot. And I've done a lot of television work, producing or field directing for like documentary type sort of programs. And I've been fortunate with that line of work to travel the whole country. But what was really, really eye-opening for me was just how beautiful and encompassing the globe our Indigenous filmmaking community is. I've been so blessed to travel to so many awesome film festivals and meet so many cool filmmakers, and just really, it's a huge joy to be part of this awesome community. And I so wish we could be in New York right now for this in person. I really, really have been blessed for how generous the NMAI has been about supporting my work all along. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we're hoping that, hopefully next year or soon thereafter, we'll be having it in person in New York and Santa Fe, and that, we can have everybody come, because, that's part of, I think, building community and stuff like that. Just having everybody together is really important. And just everyone seeing the films. So Zoe, I mean, you were talking about, applying for grants and, making shorts kind of as a build up to a feature. And, for people who aren't, who don't know a lot about filmmaking, what is the role of shorts in a filmmaker's career? Is it something that is sustainable to just make shorts, or does everyone seem to like generally is it a stepping stone to making features? What's your experience been with that?
For me personally, I felt like shorts were like practice, and that I, even in the long form, I'm learning something every time I make a film. You learn something about your craft or about actors or people or leading or, lenses and technical stuff. Or you get a chance to try something. Like I've been part of the Embargo Collective, which is something that the Imaginative Film Festival put together. And there was 5 or 7 of us each time. I was in it twice, and we got to make a short film where they gave us a bunch of rules, and we got to get out of our creative boxes and just try something. And one of the filmmakers in one of those times said something really great. And they said, this is like a time where you get to just experiment and try something. So get rid of the idea of failing, because this is your time. You're never going to get another chance to like just try something, and don't try to make the be all end all movie, just experiment, do something that you want to do. And like, that was really freeing. And it sort of like opened my mind up to the idea of like trying something every time, and that, there is more pressure other times, to not fail. But I think it's really important for your growth to be able to like grow each time. So whether you're growing from like, you're making like a 3-minute film, or you're working like in a single location, and then the next film you're making, you're able to grow upon that and use a few more locations. You have a few more people in your crew. I feel like that has naturally happened over the course of my career. Budgets have grown a little bit, and, we get a few more days to shoot. We get a few more bodies in front of and behind the camera, a few more locations, a few more bucks goes a long way sometimes. And with that, I try to make sure that there's like a time where I get to play. Like in my first feature, I got a day where we fought for this day where we could do this long scene and like shoot it as a oneer. And I had made a oneer, like a one-shot short film already. It's a 18-minute one-shot film. And so I wanted to do it. I had always wanted to try that. And like, okay, I did that. I never need to do that again, like by itself as a film. But I wanted to explore this particular scene that way. So I feel like whether you're growing from one film to the next, or like growing from the shorts to features, I feel like have this idea that like there's always like, I'm always chasing like what the next thing is, like whether it's like I feel like right now I'm chasing this idea of like, oh, I want to write and direct for television. I didn't know that I wanted to do that, but I feel like there's all these requests now just because this our world has grown, like our industry has really blossomed, and now we have more opportunity behind the camera than we ever did before. So I'm ready and I'm excited about that. And I have my first TV writing gig and directing gigs coming up this year, and I'm super stoked about that. So that's a real opportunity for growth, and like another just like a time where I'll be like answering to a lot of people and not just like fulfilling my own vision. So I'm interested in seeing what that's all about. And yeah, I think it's important to grow. Like whether you think of shorts as like a stepping stone or not, I think, being a master of shorts, I don't think I ever achieved that. I just like did a bunch of shorts, and I think it'd be maybe if I make a few more features, I can go back and be like, okay, now I'm going to make a short film that I think is just really awesome because I haven't done it yet. I suffer from a few short filmmaking problems that I see now, and I look back and I'm like, ooh, one day maybe I'll crack that nut and make a short film that I just think is really ace. And maybe you never do. That's what the other thing too is like maybe as filmmakers we never make the film where they're like, I did it. Okay, I can just retire.
How about you, Ben Alex? How have shorts kind of impacted your career? What have their role been?
I mean, shorts, when I first kind of got back into it, shorts were, of course, it was what was affordable. It was accessible. It was being able to contain a story within a shorter, kind of amount of time. And there was a learning curve with that as well, just kind of finding my way through, a cohesive story and story structure and, thinking about a lot of the nuances that I want to put into features when I eventually make one. I have not made a feature, and I just kind of started doing shorts, and I still do shorts. I make most of my money with like short form content, usually web-based or, for hire commission pieces. So I'm happy in the short form world. I've turned down a few offers for features just because I don't feel like I'm ready to invest that much time into this subject that has been offered. And so there's also just this, this learning curve of what inspires you, like what makes you want to tell that particular story. It's not just chasing stories for the sake of having opportunity. It's like being very selective about how you want to shape your narratives. And right now I love doc. I mean, I feel like I'm just a doc guy. That's my thing. It's always kind of been my love. It's what I've watched. It was the first thing that I was drawn to in the film festival circuit, was watching docs. And so now that's what I do. And I'm breaking new forms, like for instance, Sister Wolves is actually a short form doc, because it's a transcript that was taken from our Colville tribal oral history, our book of legends. So it's just kind of reinterpreted that way. A few years ago when we did Sweetheart Dancers, very few people were integrating this kind of, if no one's seen Sweetheart Dancers, it's the story of Sean and Adrian, a two-spirit couple who dance on the powwow circuit, who were rejected from the Sweetheart Dance competition because they were a same-sex couple. So I followed them and tell this story in 13 minutes. And as we circle back to it, we see that, we actually see them being denied an opportunity to dance on the floor, which was all kind of material that I shot at Gathering of Nations, but visually, the audience doesn't know that feels like the first time they've been rejected. So there's time travel hops and things that we were playing with that are now becoming more and more prevalent in doc. And a few years ago when I first did that, no one in the doc industry was cool with that. They were like, you can't do that. It's like, I'm going to do it. And so there's a bit of this kind of like rock and roll aesthetic that I bring to the way that I make my films, because I know what form is. I know what it's been. I know how we can shift it, how we can change things that, so now you see it more and more. The award-winning docs, getting Oscars and things are all implementing, a lot of like advanced storytelling techniques, which, I would not have been able to kind of find some of those tricks if I hadn't made these short films. So it is definitely beneficial for how I am creating my own signatures. For when people see a film, they're like, that's a M. Night Shyamalan, that's a Tarantino, that's a, whatever, you go down the list, that's a Sofia Coppola piece. Like, people have signatures, and I'm always really invested in how I can put a signature on doc and break form, like create something different and innovative within our own Indigenous ideologies. The other thing too is just coming from a world where I was always speaking in political speak. We're always talking about movements and making change. And so there's also part of me that rejects the idea of the colonial shape of documentary as a form and what it kind of represented, since the first documentaries were made, when white men turned their cameras on Indians to document our slow demise, And so I think that by changing that form and allowing more Indigenous kind of patterns of thought and speech in Sister Wolves, you're hearing kind of an abstract story. You're hearing something that doesn't quite make sense in a Western society, but in Native cultures, you'll totally pick up and fill in all the blanks within your mind, because it's kind of fragmented storytelling in Indian country. The way that we speak. There's a bear, then the bear gets a book, and then the book turns into a piece of deer meat, and then the deer meat's thrown over your shoulder. And you kind of follow these storylines from our traditional ways, and they're abstract. And that's kind of what I'm starting to enjoy too, is now how can I add some signatures of abstraction within doc? So I'm just looking at the form with these shorts and going, these are the things that I will build and put into my little playbook for when it's time to actually do a feature for myself. But I've been very happy in doc and in short form. I still think there's a lot to explore, and you can get more bang for your buck. You can kind of come up with a lot of new ideas. As was said here previously, you're just you're feeling out the length of a project, and you're saying, this could be a 3-minute piece. This might be a 30-second piece, or it might be a 10-minute piece. So I think when you look at short form, there's also a lot of things to take into consideration in terms of like the length of your project and what it might represent. So I've got a 3-minute piece, a 13-minute piece, a 10-minute piece, and then I produced some like 20-minute shorts, of course, the Paulette, which was directed by Heather Ray, that played at the showcase, I believe, as well. I like short form. I think it's a fun place to be, and it goes all over the film festival circuit. The other thing if we are talking to other emerging filmmakers, I may not have been making film for a long time, but I've been working in the influencer spaces and marketing and figuring out a lot of things in my day jobs to survive in my 20s in Hollywood. And one thing is that, the premium for us right now is not just our signatures, but, how much we can get out there. How much are we able to put our films on the table? So they're not just sitting in a back catalog, somewhere. I don't want to call it the Smithsonian. Smithsonian's got so many great movies, but, I haven't seen any of them. I don't know. I don't see these movies. And so that's the thing, is you're having to figure out how to continue to get on people's radar as well in a very media saturated space with a lot of really innovative new native television and movies coming out. So how does little old me get people to watch my films? Well, I try to make 2 to 4 short films now a year. And even if I'm just producing them, and then you're having the films go out and representing a kind of aesthetic or a brand that I feel like is important for Indian country to understand. So you're just carving out your way. It's like being in a band, you're just trying to make some songs, collaborate with people, and just hopefully inspire people to live a better life. As I kind of grow into middle age a little bit, I definitely have some nuggets of wisdom for people who, that are like my nephews and my kids, and I don't want to see them do the same mistakes that I made in my life too. And so a lot of this is also me just kind of slyly telling my stories so that I can also like educate people on what I think is a good way. How do you live a good way? And, so yeah, I think it's cool. Like short form storytelling can be very, very powerful, and continues to be something that's breaking into the streamers now as well. A lot of these shorts are getting picked up by Showtime and Hulu and Disney Plus. So there's also a market for shorts as well.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of brings up another question I wanted to pose to both of you, is that, I think all three of us are of the age that we remember a time before the internet. And so I think that probably shorts filmmaking has changed considerably because, as you're saying, there are all these different places where you can, it's saturated, right? As you said, in terms of the internet has just so much that you can see. How do you try to get your films out there? I mean, we have these different platforms. There's Disney Plus and all kinds of things like that. There's Vimeo, YouTube. How has that changed in terms of? But again, for YouTube, you're not necessarily getting money for that. How do these things affect you as a filmmaker? How do you navigate those kinds of getting yourself out there? I don't know if either of you wants to start.
I think I love being on set, and I used to want to be an editor, and I realized that's not my bag. I really love being on set. So I find that by that time I get to the end of the machine, the end of the circus, I got no energy left, and so I need to rely on a distributor. And I cannot be the person to submit it to every film festival in the world. And it takes a lot of time. It takes money. It takes energy. And I'm already on to the next project, by the time there's that time comes, to submit things. And in the beginning, I definitely did all that stuff, and that was back in the day where you had to mail a VHS tape in a bubble envelope to wherever, and send a check, it was that kind of time, so you would go and get, a box of 25 copies of your movie at the duplication house. and mail them out. And I think, I don't know, maybe that burnt me out or something. It's so easy now on like Film Freeway to submit films to everywhere, and you just go click, click, click. But I don't even do that anymore. So I think, the benefit of like growing your budgets and growing, from those first experiences where you are the one doing all the things, is that eventually there's a team to support you. And if you have a really good team, then there are people who do that stuff. And I definitely still do some of it, but like I'll take a first pass on a poster. I'll, respond to emails, because a lot of requests come directly to me because I'm in this Indigenous filmmaking world. So people know me, so they'll email me and be like, can we get your film? And I'll copy them to the distributor, And with my short films, I work with a small distributor here in Canada called V-Tape, and they're awesome. And they work with a lot of filmmakers of various experience. And through them, my film gets to places where I would never even know about. I get a statement a couple times a year that shows, oh my gosh, it showed in Kathmandu. It showed in some little place, in Russia that I never heard of. It showed in all of these little festivals that I never knew of, or like Canadian embassy screenings, in some weird country. And I don't know how they do it, but I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And sometimes it's really old work, it's really nice to have your back catalog still be out there, because I wouldn't, necessarily be paying attention to that myself, because I'm on, 12 projects later. Or they'll sell to educational markets or whatnot, because there's such a hunger for our work, for Indigenous people's, work. I think it's really, really brilliant if you have a chance to get your film out there to a little distributor, because that's what they do, is they get it out. And there are online versions now, and I haven't really delved into that. But I think that's really neat to see that there is that opportunity now, these little distributors where your film can live on this online space. And I don't know, maybe I'm too old to investigate all that stuff, but it's and then with features, it's just different. It's a totally different machine. It's a bigger distributor, and I'm sort of out of the picture, and I don't get to decide what film festivals my film is going to, if there hasn't been a premiere in that territory, So until we get a release in Canada, then I'm really limited right now on where my film can show. So it's cool because I will have a theatrical release, but also a little bit of a bummer because I can't submit it to every single festival there is. So it's pluses and minuses, but I think it's really important at the beginning to be the one that does all the things, so you get a handle on how things work, and get to know the festivals and the people who work at them. And meeting those people, and getting your face out there, and now you get to be a face, not just a VHS in an envelope.
What about you, Ben Alex?
Well, I want to be, romantic and think that I just want people to see my work, but reality is, it's for me, it's business. I have to, pay my bills. And so for me, the first thing I did was got a distribution mentor, because I really just wanted to understand the flow. I was like, there's a business backbone to how this all flows. And I kind of took my own personality out of it and went directly into how, my work could be distributed. And if you look at Bunky Echo-Hawk, The Resistance is a collaboration with American Masters and PBS, and then also with Topic.com, which is a product of First Look Media, with Firelight. So now you're starting to see these short form opportunities get branded and distributed in the same kind of package. And that was really beneficial for me because I was able to get a high profile, piece. And really, Bunky Echo-Hawk, The Resistance, he's the first actual visual painter or artist of native descent on American Masters ever, and that's 20-something years. So you don't realize those opportunities are out there to kind of break form and keep pushing ourselves into new spaces. So I'm kind of a bit more focused on distribution a lot of times, and I try to figure out the best opportunities for the project I'm working with. So I've built relationships with educational distributors. I talk regularly with the streamers. I have, projects on the table all over Hollywood right now. And it's just, but if it goes, it goes, as we know, I'm waiting for to sign the check, that kind of thing. So opportunities are abound, that there's Disney Plus is pushing hard for a new short form, and so is Showtime, so is Hulu. Like they want to have as many people stuck within their ecosystem to, pay them and be profitable for the corporations. And, so I do see that as why I need to understand distribution better. And it also helps my friends. I have friends who make great films, and, we've been able to jump to the head of the line in a few of these cases because I have the relationships. And so that was one thing that, even though I didn't do a lot when I was, I was more of just like an artist, an art house party guy in my 20s, I did shadow a lot of really, successful directors in Hollywood. And I was able to kind of hang out in those circles and just be a fly on the wall. So when it came time for me to put my name on the, and be like, okay, I'm going to do film. Let's just be serious about it, and let's just do the best you can do. I was lucky enough to have had some great mentors and relationships already pre-built, and that's what I'm looking for. And I think all native filmmakers should achieve these measurables and get that international distribution deals, to get on the streamers, to get into the DGAs or the writer guilds, and really take it professionally to the highest level. And if you can do that and achieve that on your own merit, it just says something about the quality of the work that will be out there for everyone to like. And it also gives other filmmakers an opportunity to step up, because now the industry's hungry. We've created a market space. Canada, of course, does that a lot better than the United States has in the past. Canada is just a more developed system, and they've always, APTN has just always kind of been there in my life, and just seeing all the work that gets produced and created is wonderful. There's an outlet for it. And here in America, or in the States, we struggle for that. And now it's getting easier. It's getting a little bit easier now. But I definitely think finding, these streamer opportunities for your films is really, really beneficial for any filmmaker. And I'm also happy to, if people reach out to me on social media or my emails, I'm always happy to consider introducing them as well, because it's not, the old guard, the old way of doing film was this mysterious Hollywood cool guy thing where if you're my friend, I might introduce you to a friend. That was kind of the old way. Now you're just like, listen, we're building a movement of filmmakers. We're trying to empower youth. We're trying to change the ways that things didn't work in the past. So my contacts are your contacts. My people are your people. And then if the honor system applies in that way, and I think we've been able to achieve more in a shorter amount of time working as cooperatives and just sharing our resources than we would if we were just, still sitting there in the VIP room, which is, Hollywood's changed, filmmaking is changing for the better.
I am really appreciative of you guys to be here, and I want to be respectful of your time, because this has been a great conversation. I could keep going. I have lots of questions I could keep asking you, but just to kind of, as I said, be respectful of your time. Maybe the last thing that we could talk about is if you could just briefly kind of, tell us maybe what you're working on, or if there is, maybe you're not working on it, but like what you would like your ultimate goal, like the film you want to make would be. Maybe Zoe, why don't you go?
Sure. I'm working on a series right now called Little Bird. It's being produced by Jennifer Podamsky and Hannah Moskovich, and it's for Crave, one of the streamers in Canada. And I'm writing a few episodes, and I'll be directing a few episodes. It's a limited series of 6 episodes. So I'm deeply involved in that. We're going to Scout later in the month. And super stoked. It's a really important story about the 60s scoop. And I'm really, really honored to be part of that, and really looking forward to directing for television in a 1-hour format. I'm just like really, really just excited about that. And I'm also, got my second feature on the circuit now. We're having the Canadian premiere later this month. And what else? Oh, there's always stuff, that we're got funding applications in for this and that. But, like Ben says, nothing's real until we're on set, right? So, and even then, I'm always like a few days, I won't relax really till we're a few days in, because things can even go south. I've been on, not my own film, but a film that fell apart after 4 days and was meant to be a 60-day deal. And then they broke for 4 days and then came back on. But I was like, oh my gosh. So even being on day one isn't a guarantee. So it's always, we've all been there on projects that didn't end up coming to fruition, even though we were really excited about it. I have a third feature film that it was actually the very first one that I wrote, and I knew that it could never be the first film that I made because it was too big, and that I wouldn't be ready for it, and that I didn't want to do it wrong, and I needed enough money for it. And so I feel like I'm there now, so I haven't started that ball rolling yet, but when I do, I know that it'll roll, and I'll be ready for it then. And I always imagined that maybe it would be my third feature film. I don't know what my last one will be, but maybe my third. I don't know. It's a lot of work.
How about you, Ben Alex?
Since it's November, pop over to the other Smithsonian industry building called the Futures exhibit, The Future We Dream. I was commissioned to do a 3-minute piece it's executive produced by LL Cool J and Kevin Bright, who created the series Friends. The Arts and Industry building is opening for the exhibit Future We Dream and my piece is specifically on an artist here in Las Vegas named Fawn Douglas, who is, into land back. So basically, she's taking the tribal money that she's been getting from her tribe and purchasing land to create more art colony spaces for Indigenous artists to be welcome on her homeland, and buying it back piece by piece, which is a really incredible story. She's able to get a gallery space and have this whole thing. And it's a beautiful story of an activist actually being able to, realize their dreams. And so that's a short piece that you can see at the Smithsonian right now. And then I'm in the edit for a piece called Thunderstruck, which is about the world famous suicide race, which is kind of a Wild Bill Cody era stunt race that happens in Omak, Washington once a year, where they jump off a big cliff into the water on horseback. It's been going on for over 100 years, and it's become a legendary race for Native people in the Northwest. It was featured in Keith Merrill's 1973 Oscar-winning film documentary about wild cowboys, and so you can see clips of it in that film, but it's never really fully spoken about. So I grew up with the writers. Those are some of my old friends from high school, and now their kids are writing. And so I'm just kind of, want to tell a story about, redemption and, kind of taking back something that was created to kind of disrespect Indians. I think it was made in an era where we were a sideshow, and now it's kind of become like a badge of honor and respect in our community. And it's a healthy, traditional way to express our horsemanship. And then, of course, we always have I'm producing 2 Vision Maker docs right now. One called Older Than the Crown for my cousin Derek Lemire, which is about the landmark case of our Colville tribes suing the Canadian government and winning in the Supreme Court to acknowledge that the Sinaiaks people still exist because we were declared extinct as the border cut off our Okanagan territories. So that was that's the film that follows the guy who challenged the government and we won this as of a few months ago. And then a short film by my good friend Chad Charlie called Firecracker Bullets. His 7-year journey of going from a comedian to a medic at Standing Rock and the fallout of PTSD while he's trying to work in a firecracker booth in Tulalip, Washington. And just talking about, what it's like to have to come home after enduring, frontline action, and the way that it creates disassociations and alcoholism and violence around the home. Not Chad specifically, but we're talking about in general. these kids are going and putting their bodies on the line for these pipelines, and they're fighting and fighting, and everyone says, you're a warrior, warrior up, you're good. But the truth is when they come home, they have we have a hard time, integrating back into society. It's the prayers are great, but the actual need for counselors and real help is there. And so this film is part hybrid. It's animation. It's got some throwback material, and it's conceptual. So I'm really excited about these pieces because they're all unique and they tell a story in a different way. And I'm excited about the Smithsonian Futures piece. If you get a chance to go check it out, because I'm using animation, music. I've got like all kinds of really hybrid elements. It's almost like a doc music video. So these are just exciting things for me to break form. I just like to try new things, and this is a good year.
Yeah, we're really excited to see more work from both of you, and hope that people can check out your films that we have this year. Really, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and I really appreciate it. If people have more, if people need more information about the showcase, just go to our website, americanindian.si.edu. But yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.